since volunteering at the shelter, I've met various addicts, and I mean, from my perspective, because they've got one place to stay for the night, they seem quite positive. But obviously they're in the position they're in because of drugs in the first place, quite a lot of the time. And I found down there that it's a repeating pattern, that even if you rehouse these people or you get them rooms in hostels, then quite often, I mean, I think the shortest time that somebody came to the shelter was rehomed and then came back again was something like 2-3 days, just because they felt out of place, so they didn't like the accommodation, or they still had a dangerous habit, and they ended up back at the shelter again and had to spend the night and were right back in the same pattern. But even though there's that negative side to it, you do get success stories. Like there is Debbie at the shelter, who she's in her mid-30s. She's been homeless and had problems with drugs since her early 20s, and she's been travelling up and down the country, sleeping rough, doing things like heroin, all the sort of class A's that have made it very difficult for her to sort of stay anywhere or hold down any kind of life. But she's a person who's come through the other side. She's got herself a flat now. She volunteers at the shelter pretty much every night. She's like the emergency person they go to, and she's really the best kind of person to work with these kinds of people, because she's been through it and come out the other end. Whereas other people who haven't experienced drugs in that kind of way, they only sort of read about it, or only do it sort of now and then, they can't expect to talk to these people on the same level and understand what they're actually going through and try and help them out with it. So people like Debbie are in desperately short supply, and they're not helped. They're not helped in any way. But the contradiction there is that these people are willing to give up so much of their time to try and help these people out, and from my experience, they're given very little support to do that with. In terms of rehabilitation, I'd like to say there's a lot on offer, but there really isn't. I mean, in my time there, I've seen there's a few phone numbers up on the board, and I think there are some meetings that you can be directed to, but in the way of support, the only thing they really do down at this particular place is things like arts and crafts and various other sort of little events that they try and sort of, I suppose, encourage them to be doing something with their time, something productive, but it's not ideal, and there's no real sort of support basis for them to use. So I think it was sort of only addressing part of the problem and ignoring the sort of the root of the thing, which is why they're there in the first place.
Do they not like point them in the direction of? Do they not say, if you want proper rehabilitation help, go here?
Well, yeah, of course they do. They do. Like I said, they have phone numbers for people. They can direct people if they want to know. But for the fact that it's so disconnected for each other, from the fact that you think that, right, why are these people here? Why are they coming in? Okay, they have drug abuse issues, so they're homeless. They're still repeating that pattern. So they've come to the shelter just for one night. They might come back in a couple of days, but why are they here in the first place? Well, are we going to do anything about that? And it's just down to somebody else, somewhere else, to do that, and to go, right, you should go here, instead of providing these things in one place, which I think would be the best thing to do. And if they want to commit to a program, then it's already there for them, so they can get somewhere to sleep, somewhere to eat, and become familiar with the place. And I think it's important that when you're trying to help somebody in any scenario whatsoever, you want to establish a level of comfort and sort of familiarity with that person. And I just don't think that happens when you go, all right, you're here, but you can go off to this other place, and this happens, and then you can contact this person. I think it's quite broken. It's quite positive. I mean, like I say, because it's like a cycle, and you see the sort of faces. I mean, you see occasional new people, but you do see a lot of the same faces coming in time and time again. It's almost like a little community of people. So even people who, I suppose, even people who would have a punch up on the street or other places, they don't tend to do that inside the shelter, because obviously that's their place to go for the night, where they're going to sort of be warm and fed, and everyone tends to sort of just get on with each other. They all seem quite positive when they come in. You know, they're lovely people, always up for talking about anything. And there's definitely no sort of woe is me. There's none of that there whatsoever. I'm really glad I did it. I'm really glad that I got up and went and at least gave it a try. Because I did meet, you know, really nice people. People that have really been dragged through the gutter, and some of them are still there. Some of them are coming out the other end. Some of them are falling into it. But they're all, the majority of them are very nice people, and you can get on really well with them, especially considering that it's not something that's brought up. It's not something you even need to talk about with them a lot of the time. You know, a lot of the time it's quite sort of, you know, the sort of mundane conversations that you'd have with anyone else. But they're a lot of them are very funny people, and it's well worth, I think, getting involved in that kind of thing to just to talk to people that have experienced possibly a more colourful life than you might have thought possible. So I'd say yeah.